Howdy, folks, and welcome to another episode of Stanley and the Sea Can. Alrighty, so this is one of my famous ranting videos, I think, unfortunately. Took a couple days off in December here to 2025 and kind of back at it things now. And I'm seeing there's like government document, technical document released on all these evil firearms that need to be banned. And of course, the SKS is featured on there. This is a modified SKS to do extra fun things. And of course, before I came back, there was a tragedy in Australia. Yeah, so I just thought I'd try to digest what is going on in the world and try to figure out how we can talk about this. So starting here at home first, right? So we got government releases this technical paper of all these different firearms that are evil and different kind of styles. So what they're going after is your semi-automatic centerfires, right? So that's centerfire means a cartridge kind of like this. This is a dummy, of course, but it's got a primer in the middle and it's got a rim. So the primer is where your firing pin would strike. You can kind of see there's some practice strikes on there, and it would go off, and that would cause a little tiny fire to happen, and it would burn the propellant inside, which would push the projectile out. Where a rim fire, the center and the bottom is solid, and then it just has right around the rim, it has kind of like a spongy rim that you can squish really soft metal there, and you can hit it with a firing pin, and it squishes the rim anywhere on the rim. Now, it doesn't have to be center, and it goes off and does its thing. So this would be a centerfire cartridge. Metallic cartridge, some would call it. And this here type of firearm would be a semi-automatic. So once you put in a magazine to it, or internal box magazine, or whatever it had or has, the firearm will continue to fire using the energy from, or some of the bleed off energy from firing this casing. In this case, cartridge would sit about there. Then the hammer firing pin would strike the back piece here, and the projectile is going to travel down the barrel. And then once it gets past this point here, some of the gases are going to come up and cycle a piston, which is going to push a bunch of stuff, magic happen back here, and whack the carrier and make it go back and cycle the next round as the projectile is continuing to leave the barrel, go off to wherever it's going, somewhere safe. So that's the kind of definition of a semi-automatic, how it works, right? So it could just steal the recoil energy, it could steal gas, it could steal, this has a piston in it, it could be direct impingement. There's all sorts of different ways these things work. But the idea is that somehow energy from firing the first cartridge, or a cartridge, causes the firearm mechanism to recycle, and it'll grab the next cartridge out of the magazine, and it will load it into the chamber, ready to go. Pull the trigger again, and it goes again. So the government seems to be after these. They made a list of all sorts of stuff. They talked about bullpup shotguns. So this would be a kind of a standard configuration where you've got the trigger kind of directly below the receiver, the magazine stuff in the front, where a bullpup would be the stock. Like all of this stuff here is kind of like moved way back into the stock. The trigger still kind of has to be there just because of human ergonomics, but there's all these big linkages going back on the inside. We've seen those before in like the Tavors and things. So they want all those. They want this kind of thing, anything that's semi-automatic, centerfire, and anything that's got some sort of a military lineage to it. So, well, this is the SKS. It was designed for combat during the Cold War eras there, and the end of World War II and stuff, right? But it was quickly replaced by other firearms. But yeah, this is the one that's the really big important one to Canadians, because everyone's got a couple of them, despite the government saying there's only 14 in existence or whatever nonsense number. There's more than 14 in this room. And yes, they're registered and everything is above board with that. So their numbers on that is just wild and crazy. So that's kind of what they're after there. So what am I worried about with this? It's just they wanting to take and take and take, right? So you can't have semi-automatic firearms. Basically what they're trying to go, because they're saying it's so scary, so deadly, so this and that, weapons of mass destruction, blah, 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 designed to kill as many people as fast as possible. And that's just simply not the case. It's not how they're designed to be. It's one of those, maybe we'll make a debunking video on it, but it's basically like almost like a propaganda piece to try to convince you that this is super evil and it's far more deadly than some other firearm that you may have, right? Like I'll tell you, no historiologist here, but semi-automatic firearms kind of didn't really exist much before the 1900s. So I'm pretty sure there were some wars. I know it's got a little guy named Napoleon and stuff. They had all these guns and they were shooting at people and doing all sorts of stuff. And they certainly didn't have semi-automatic or fully automatic firearms. So somehow is this more deadly? No. It's not. It's just simply not. The numbers don't stack up. Statistics don't match up to it. It's just simply a propaganda piece to say this is bad for whatever reason. We need to get it gone. Maybe it looks scary because it's got a bayonet lug and all these things. Who knows? But this is what the government seems to have their heart set on right now. So that's the direction they're moving. So I'm thinking in the future at some point, depending on what happens with if we have an election or if we have more people crossing the floor to the liberal side of the government, they may be going after firearms a bit more aggressively than they have been in the past, which is kind of hard to believe, but they say there's still work to do, and by golly, they're going to get it done. They're going to help us out and keep us safe. Yeah, and I guess the other kind of leading into this is already with all the guns that they've banned, we have, estimates of billions and billions of dollars that it's going to cost to take all these things and buy them back, the buyback. So basically expropriation costs for these things, and then all the bureaucracy costs in the background to deal with and handle and ship and destroy and categorize and all that good stuff. And so, people get kind of innumerate over time. So if this project costs $4 billion to get rid of all these firearms, and there's 40 million people, you got, so 40 million, but 1 0 is 400 million, one more zero. So $100 per person is man, woman, child, young, old, everything like that is going into taking these firearms off the street, which sounds fantastic. It's like, oh, it's only $100. I'll pay $100 out of my pocket. But it's kind of like the government doesn't have that money. So they're going to take a loan to get the money. So that $100 is going to add to the deficits and everything else. And there's tons of articles out there. We can post some links, like police services from all over the country, statisticians, everything is saying that removing the firearms from lawful gun owners is not going to affect the street crime. And it won't, right? Because whoever owns this is not the kind of person who's going out and causing crimes and doing things that they shouldn't be doing at weird hours of the night and such, right? Like these are like lawfully vetted people. And so the $100 per person could easily be spent on something that's more beneficial to all of us, right? Who knows? Mental health, border patrols, anything like that, right? I think it's just such a rabbit hole to go down. It's going to be a bottomless pit of doom. It's just basically an exercise in bureaucracy. So fast forward a few weeks after that thing came out, we kind of go to Australia, and there was a tragedy there. There was a shooting, and the Australian government immediately came out with a new sets of recommendations for how they're going to make firearms ownership more difficult in Australia. So namely, it's semi-automatics, detachable box magazines, high capacity magazines was one of the things they listed. And the crimes that were committed there were not committed with semi-automatics. As far as we can tell, they were done with hunting firearms. So they're tools. If they're misused, they're going to cause damages, right? It's terrible to say, but it is, right? If you look at England, they've taken away all their guns for years and years. There's still firearms violence, and there's the number of people getting hurt in violent crimes with knives and hammers and other things is like through the roof, right? So you got to stop the people. It's the people that are the problem, not the tools, because you always find so many tools. We take away every knife, then they'll use hammers. Take away every hammer, then they'll use screwdrivers. Take away all the screwdrivers, they'll use sticks. Take away all the sticks and cut down all the trees across the entire country, well, we'll use rocks. Take away all the rocks and sticks, and now we're just living in this bubble foam land. Well, we'll wait until wintertime and we'll kill each other with ice cubes. It's the minds of the people that need to be addressed, and the bad actors that are making it problematic for everyone, right? It's not the tools, because there's always some new tool, right? So my fear is the Canadian government is going to, in the past, when there's issues in Australia and New Zealand, they have tried to introduce new legislation through orders and councils to limit what we can do here. They're saying, oh, look, it happened there, so we don't want that to happen here. It's the same thing. It's kind of like, well, is it though? In Germany, they have the Autobahn. They can drive pretty darn fast on the Autobahn, but here we don't get to drive super fast on the highways because it's just a different situation, right? It's totally different culture and different set of values, core values for the populace, right? So it doesn't make sense, right? In some countries you can't drink alcohol, some countries you can, some countries you can't eat pork, some countries you can. So it's like you can't say what works in one country is definitely going to work in another country, because it just doesn't work that way. The people are different, the culture is different, and Canada has a very long, very rich history of hunting and fur trading and hunting for sustenance and game and all sorts of stuff, right? There's so many different activities firearms can be used in, and not let alone the Olympic Games. There's biathlon, there's pistol shooting, there's shotgun shooting, there's all sorts of fantastic events that are recognized on a world stage as being competitions of skill and mastery kind of thing, right? To the point of they're in the Olympic Games, right? So it's not even like it's some bunch of rednecks out there drinking bottles of whiskey and shooting the empty bottles off a fence post or something like that, right? It's like, no, this is a seriously challenging thing to do. And if you've never tried it, I would recommend you ask around. I'm sure you know somebody. There's at least 4 million PAL holders in Canada, which is people with their possession and acquisition licenses, I believe. So that means 1 in 10 people. So even if you live in a big city somewhere or whatnot, just ask around. I'm sure you'll find somebody who owns firearms or knows someone who does own firearms, and you can arrange a range day or something, because extreme majority of the firearms community is incredibly kind and focused on knowledge, and like knowledge is power kind of thing. So if you want to see what one of these things does, is it going to like, put you on your butt if you shoot something like this or a little cartridge like this? Why don't you ask somebody and see if they take you out to the range? Or why don't you, if you are a firearms holder or PAL holder and you have firearms like this, maybe you could ask around the office or the workplace or wherever and say, hey, does anyone want to try this out? It's kind of cool, right? You can see what it's like. And then at least you'll be able to make informed decisions on whether you think this is too dangerous to have or whatever. But one thing I do know is whenever I've taken out people that have never shot before or are very new to it or whatnot, they always end the day with like a huge grin on their face. And certainly if not a grin, they'll be like, okay, wow, I've got a much greater understanding of how this works and how you guys have to use them and the procedures to transport them and clean them and maintain them and all these different things that kind of all comes with it, right? It's not just like what you see on the movies or something like that, right? These are tools and we use them in our arsenal of tools to do all sorts of things, right? You can hunt with a bow and arrow, you can hunt with a spear, you can hunt with this. And so the SKS has become Canada's hunting rifle, right? Because of just the massive number of them. I think the government stats saying there's only 14 in the country has to do with maybe 14 restricted versions or variants that are registered. So that would be cutting the barrel down to like here, which you can't really do yourself because that would be illegal. So anyway, there's my rant for the day. I'm getting all worked up here. I fear there's going to be more firearms prohibitions for no good reason in the new year, 2026, just because world politics and we need votes, people. We need votes. So we got to beat on the people who normally get beat on, and it's worked for years. So why would it stop now, right? So that's what we need to change as a community. Is like say like, you know what, this is ridiculous now, right? Please let us know what you think about this type of content in the comments. And of course, like and subscribe if you like to hear this kind of stuff. Okay, thanks so much. It's like Grandma says, firearms in Canada is like having a GPS. You're always recalculating.